The April 9th Conservation meeting at about 46 minutes to 7:46.
Yeah, she's not
47 tonight.
Never seen that before.
It's kind of weird sitting on the end.
Oh yeah, Carl, it's not
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
No.
All right, so
To wait for Amy to come back. I guess we've got to move along. Anybody got any omissions or corrections to the minutes?
I had a couple of things, but very, very minor.
I just had a grammatical on the top of page 3 under the Hartwell CR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down towards the right. Just a K was left off. We'll look into.
Also on that page, first page 2, it's not big, but third paragraph down, discussion of Caldwell pump test. It says, the only time pump test would stop is if Mass DEP requires it due to a major storm. I changed to DUE instead of DO. And then I just noted on page 3, top of the Hartwell Avenue Conservation Restriction, that's a discussion item, right?
Yes.
So I would just put discussion
Yep.
there.
Just have a-
And the other is just editorial, tiny.
Perfect, thank you.
Page 3 under the Hartwell CR discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7 lines down should be Ms. instead of Mr. I gotta chuckle at that. Thanks for the, or whatever.
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Filing fee review, I assume that got taken care of tonight?
Yep, and it was approved, yep. So just as note for that, so any applicants coming in as of tomorrow will fall under the new filing fees.
And Chase Durbig did have a couple comments on the fees. He thought that the crossings fee maybe should be up from $725, because he said that the work involved is larger than $25.
Exorbitant.
And also the fees for after violations.
So it might be something that we want to relook at.
Well, you got quite a bit changed, didn't you, when you stop and think about it?
It's a good start, but it's also been a while too, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I suppose if you really felt so, if we go back for Cloverdale with them, you could make a note of that at that time, so you don't have to
That's
keep
true.
traipsing down there. Hartwell Ave Conservation Restriction Update. Can I speak to that?
Mrs. Berger, as requested last time, had a approval form made up. This town council has looked at and approved for the past subdivision of parcel 2, I think, into 3 parcels. So I think, Andrew, you weren't here for that discussion?
Was that last meeting? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Carl, what, and so we got a mishmash, so I don't know who feels comfortable signing this, if you want to have a little more discussion about it.
But council has already looked at that and approves it,
Yes.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I feel comfortable because we saw kind of
So should we pass it around?
Yeah, there's 2 copies in there, which I figure that way I can keep an original. and-
So we'll sign both of them?
Yes,
Do you need a
please.
motion to accept that?
Might
I
be a
think
good
so, yeah,
idea.
that way that was.
Anna, do you want to just read that
Oh, read the,
out loud, the motion for that, so we can, the language of that?
let's see, there are 2 sheets.
It's just the top sheet, because the next one's just the notarizing
Okay.
piece of it.
All right. So this one is the Town of Littleton Conservation Commission Plan Division Approval. It says on Monday, April 9th, at public hearing, Littleton Conservation Commission voted to approve the subdivision of Lot 2 on Hartwell Ave into 3 lots, 2A1, 2A2, and 2B. 85A, 73, 65 Hartwell Avenue, respectively, being shown on a plan entitled Plan of Land, Hartwell Avenue, Littleton, Mass., Middlesex County, recorded with the Middlesex District Registry of Deeds as Plan Number 1696 of 2005. Said approval is subject to and with the benefit of the provisions set forth in the conservation restriction recorded with said registry in Book 45931, page 110. All the members were listed. Is that wrong?
Is 1696 the correct number for that plan? I had written down, and I'm sorry, I didn't double check it, 1969, but I might have been inverted numbers too.
Also, it would help saying 85A, 73, 65 Hartwell Ave respectively, because that's what they were, I guess.
Well, we don't need to make a change, unless I'll make a change, but.
Okay, all right. As
But
long
we
as
should
you make
definitely have
one
the.
change, then.
Yeah, we should definitely have the plan number correct.
One of them's correct.
Change that.
I guess we need to,
Do you want to move on to something else until I get back?
yeah.
You want me to see, because I might have it right on top of my desk when I check it, so we can.
Okay.
Yeah, like one that we had language that we like held true to. Cobb would probably be one. Oh, definitely. Okay.
I was wrong, you're right, it's 1696. So that form's
Okay,
correct.
so it's correct.
Sorry about that.
So, you made the motion, or we need a motion on that?
Oh, make a motion that we approve this approval form for approving the division of Hartwell Ave lots into 3 as stated.
Can I have a second from somebody?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I think we better move along to the next.
Also on the Hartwell Avenue CR, so Natural Heritage had written enforcement letters to 5153 Hartwell, and I guess, yes, to you, to 73 Hartwell as well, and not 85B, because we're kind of in process of, that's the scope one. And basically what Natural Heritage asked for was plans for restoration to be done within 6 months.
Yep. To be
So-
submitted or approved within 6 months?
I forget the exact language.
Okay, because that could make a difference on the applicant's behalf.
Yeah. It says, develop a plan to remove within 6 months of the date of this.
Okay.
So that's Natural
That's great, that's
Heritage.
greater leeway, yep. Okay.
You can obviously say whatever you want.
I didn't see the second one.
Okay, I'd like to.
So, did you have anything, Jerry, aren't you? Yeah, did you have anything for plan?
No, we will go for it.
Okay, for the shed.
Yeah, I mean, the level that they wrote didn't really look like that actually. It didn't actually address quite a few things we said, but.
The two of them was what.
Well, it's, in terms of changing the conservation restriction, it's
Well, no, I mean,
almost impossible.
Right, well, I get that.
So,
But,
yeah.
there was no addressing of the argument that we made here before, but the fact that, yes, of course, we completely understand that legally we have to do this within the construction zone, but it's going to be more damaging to do it. But sorry, if they don't care about that, that's, not what you can do about that. But yes, we'll come up with a plan. The part of the letter as well was about finishing the staking out of the corners. We still have, there's one temporary stake of the 5 that are going to be on our property. This is maybe not, I don't know when that's going to come up, but the 4 that are already there, we're okay with those. Those are fine because they're in the trees. But the one that's going to be right on the edge of our lawn, we'd like to have a talk about what that is, because I don't want it to be a 4-foot massive pole with a sign on it. So, I mean, we've got a few ideas, but the other 4 are fine.
Granite bound or something?
It's not going to be in the middle of your lawn anymore.
Well, it's going to be right on the edge of our lawn.
Right.
So, I mean, the ones that are in the trees don't care, can't really see those.
Yeah.
This is going to be like facing our house.
I think there was one suggestion, put a bush around it. It's just a thought.
To me, that's kind of like, what's the point in insisting that it's visible if you're allowed to put a bush around it?
Well, it's more, it's supposed to be monumental, so it's
Well,
supposed to
it's
be
like a rock
more
wall.
like in perpetuity, so that something's supposed to be always maintained. So when you sell the property, if that ever occurs, those stakes are there and present.
So one of the things I
So
thought
some
about-
things, a lot of people do use granite mounds.
Or, I don't know whether this is feasible, but something like a manhole cover with a sign on it, because then it's flush to the ground, but it's permanent. It's,
Yes, I think just to submit your thoughts, for sure, could be a good option. Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'd like to open the hearing, continue public hearing, notice of intent, 73 Howell Ave, 17-57, Mass DEP 204-859, construction of a single-family home.
So I'd like to, you guys are not going to, you're looking for the Board of Health and Natural Heritage.
You can just introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, Glenn Berger, 73 Hartwell. I think you mentioned in previous meetings that you wanted me to collect the Board of Health and Natural Heritage. So we have the Board of Health tomorrow night, which hopefully will be, all issues will be resolved, and I'm waiting to hear from Natural Heritage.
Okay.
So I guess we continue.
Yep.
Request to continue until I
many-
have all that?
Amy, when would you encourage Mr. Berg to continue too?
I'm trying to remember what Natural Heritage held outstanding. I think it was probably just
No, they, when,
making sure that this subdivision was approved. Was that the only thing they had?
I think in the last communication, she said in a week or two, she was going to come up with some conditions, but I haven't received anything. So I think she's waiting for, my engineer had to modify the septic system plan, so that, once that's all resolved, hopefully tomorrow.
Will she want to see that recorded as well?
This?
No, any of those changes or that language?
Once they issue the amended CMP, that will have to be recorded.
Okay,
This document I have to record and get to her with the,
Yes.
with the plans.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So our next meeting is May 14th, correct?
Yeah.
Unless we have to double up on some meetings.
But we have to give him
Yeah.
a date to be continued too.
A lot of things kind of dropped out or skipped since I put in that possibility of the extra meeting, so maybe you're okay.
Okay. But if things happen ahead of time, just let Amy know. If there is another meeting, we'll be happy to put you on.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
8 o'clock,
Oh, I haven't notarized it yet.
Oh, okay.
I gotta do that.
So I'll stop it.
Yeah, I'll let you know when that's done.
All right.
continued discussion of enforcement order 65 Howell Ave.
anything else that we discussed?
Yeah, you're good.
Phil Petterino, 65 Hartwell. I emailed this stuff to Amy earlier today, but this is the overall plan that the engineers and wetland scientists came up with. And this is the,
Right. That's the one.
oh, you guys have, oh, I made 5 copies, so.
Actually, I'd like a copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Oxbow's not here tonight, so you're going to be able to address their questions that we have
He,
in here.
Oh, could I get a copy too? Sorry.
if you have any questions, I'll have to bring them up to him, yes.
Okay. So Andrew wasn't here at the last meeting, so if you want to just go ahead and do an overview of what's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Since the last meeting, I was asked to put some hay bales on the lower limits, straw wattle up top, and I hydroseeded with a tackifier on the slope as a temporary measure.
And Amy, you went back out on Thursday?
Yeah, I went out right after you did it, and it looked fine, and then I went out Monday or Tuesday, Friday, whenever,
When it
after the storm.
rained, yep.
And there'd been some gulling in the top slope, but nothing went past.
Okay, there's gonna be another rain on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Does he have to repair anything before?
No, it was, I mean, some of it was probably old,
Yeah, I put a little bit of
Ripples.
stone up top where there was
Yeah.
one gully and some mulch, so.
yeah. It
But
wasn't
only
moving like
until-
it had been. And that was a big storm.
So I think Oxbow put together a well summarized report for you, just for some of the commissioners, just to kind of highlight some of the items on page 1, where it says the majority of sediment deposits are located at the toe of slough against the silt fence, which is currently located 8 to 10 feet within the conservation restriction. Some material has transgressed the fence and has been deposited on the slope in the buffer zone and within the bordering vegetated wetlands. It varies. They map the perimeter of the silt deposits, the extent there's a ½ inch to more than non-native material in that area. They estimated 6,500 square feet of alteration within the conservation restriction, including areas in the buffer zone and the BVW. They found a ½ inch to approximately 6 inches of silt at various portions on the site. They talk about, in terms of the impact categories, the result of the ongoing discharge of saturated fine particle materials to the neighboring property has resulted in the accumulation of sediment and a minor change of grade therein. Some material was transported in small rivulets down the slope by runoff across the existing hiking trail and deposited into the bordering vegetated wetlands at the bottom of the slope. We talk about the general approach. Do you want to, so I think here, perhaps maybe you could help reference some of these questions that we have on page 3. In the second paragraph under the general approach, it says initially the exposed slope suffering from erosion will be regraded and planted with grass and wildflower mix to prevent. I think my question is throughout this process where the access is going to take place. So I think if you can take the commission of where you are today and having gone through this whole report with Oxbow, where you think your stages of work would be.
I want to get the slope, get everything from the silt fence pulled back. I want to put boulders about 1 foot off of the conservation restriction line, loom the whole slope, get it seeded so it can grow with this next good month of growing, and then just have one path down with a skid steer type machine that can reach in, but staying on my side. I can reach in the air, load the bucket, and then pull it out. So I'll have, a set of tracks going down the slope while we're doing the removal, but at least the majority of the slope will be, grown by then.
So because you're going to be working in a restricted area, are you?
Just by hand. That'll all be handwork.
Okay.
Or by reach.
That's what I mean. So I'm gonna go to the conservation restriction line with that machine. I can reach in about 20 feet with the flat bucket, and I can throw the stuff in by hand to make things go faster.
Okay, because as stated, you're like 8 feet into the CR. which is where the hay bale line is now.
Right, so I'm gonna pull, that's where all the, so right now, that's the hay bale line and the silt fence line is about that 8-foot section. I wanna get all that stuff out of there, and I can redo that hay bale line, I can put that back at the conservation restriction line.
Okay, but you're
So I'm
gonna
not-
pull, you're gonna pull your bank back first?
Yes, well, I'm gonna go down, work low to high, so I'm gonna get all that silt first, and then all the dirt, put the rocks in,
Okay.
and then move.
Because here you have to define where your access is gonna be, because on the second paragraph, it states access will be designated by single entrance to the work area, so you have to designate on your plan where you're gonna access, in terms of your machinery that's going down.
It'll be all on my property land, there's not gonna be any, there won't be any conservation restriction access with the machine. So I'm gonna put those rocks at this line, and then I'm gonna sit on, my area where I can
Okay.
work and
So-
reach over.
To be specific, you'll have to state that. So when it says access will be designated, you'll have to state that it's on your property and not
Okay.
in that area.
I can have him change that.
When you talk about the next paragraph down, handwork will be utilized, so handwork will be utilized in the wetland and material transported uphill in buckets. So why wouldn't you use handwork when you're working in the BVW and in the CR area, more specifically in the BVW?
Why wouldn't I do handwork?
Right,
We are gonna do it. It's
okay,
all
but it
gonna-
doesn't state that. So
Okay.
you're only referring to wetlands, so, but we would need, this has to be comprehensive, that it would then state also in the BBW and in your conservation restriction.
Yes, everything in the conservation restrictions handbook.
Except for the part where. you
Except
can
for that
reach.
8-foot where I'm already over, where the silt fence is.
That's too much for handwork.
It's,
Right.
yeah, it's,
So, but that's what I'm saying, it has to be very specific of where work is going to occur and in what order. The 2 paragraphs down from there, when you talk about wetland will be seeded with native wetland herbaceous mix, you'll need to submit that spec to Amy. Below that, where it talks about clean wood chips, we've had interesting discussions whether wood chips is best for an area of regrowth, or whether it's going to be something that's more of a mulch in order to have sufficient layers in order for it to regenerate. So I would ask the commission to look at that on the bottom of that
That's on,
page.
that's on the trail, actually.
Oh, the hiking trail?
that's
I
just for the
think
trail.
that-
I mean, I don't,
understand what we were talking
I
about
won't put
earlier.
them if you don't want them. He put that in there, I'd rather not, so.
I thought it was a great idea.
It's more work for me, whatever you want. That was just for the trail, whatever.
Okay, so that's just for the trail. I think on page 4, where I had the most amount of kind of questions and concern was when you're in the B2 section, and you talk about that you're gonna have 1 pound of native wetland restoration mix on hand, but then you come down 2 paragraphs from there, and it says, within the wetland, we will plant not less than 25, it's basically the plugs of the ferns, and not less than 10 of a 2-gallon containers. So I took the moment today to kind of educate myself on what the cost of these are, and as we know with different plantings on this commission, that we have a 30% kind of like non-survival rate of things that gets planted. So when I look at this, when you are to have 2-inch ferns and you have a 40-fill tray, basically each fern is $1.68 a piece. And so if you were to have 25, and then you add your shrubs, so I estimated as here where it says 10 shrubs, and so I took a high bush blueberry, which is anywhere from $18 to $29, and took the mean of that for $250. Your overall plantings will be anywhere from $292 to $376, and I think that for this area of impact, that it's lacking. And my thought would be that the plantings should be doubled in population, but also when we talk about later on in terms of the review of this, it says that it's be done for 2 years. Our standard for the commission is now 3 years to go through, so I would change that. I just feel as though this needs to be more robust here. Those are just my concerns. And then as you go further down into B3, the second paragraph, so this is upland restoration and plantings. In the second paragraph, it says, material that can be reached from the property line using a flat blade machine will be directed to the depth by the wetland scientist and restored to the original grade. So just for specifics, can you tell us what area that's going to be? Because that would have to be spelled out in this paragraph.
I can't, I don't know what he's referring to there. I mean, we're gonna take everything down to where he feels is original grade, you know, in this area. This whole 6,000 square feet, it's not all contaminated either. So when you say double the plants, I mean, this is encompasses the area, but it's not the whole thing. It's all streams and pockets, so. You know, it's 6,000 square feet, but it's really, if you can't, it's not, you know, measured as far as what's actually impacted, so.
So getting back to this area where it says flat-bladed machine will be directed to the depth by the wetland scientist and restored to the original grade.
When he refers
So-
to the flat-bladed machine, he's just, I have a machine that you probably haven't seen before. It's like a skid steer, but you can reach out with it. So he's just referring to reaching out with the machine and putting everything in the bucket, but not, the machine's not doing any of the work.
Right, so what you'll need to do is to spell out specifically where this particular machine is going to be utilized.
And that probably shouldn't refer to the property line, that probably should refer to the conservation restriction line. Because most of it's on your property, it's just in the conservation restriction.
Yeah.
You know, because your property line keeps going straight, right?
Right, the conservation
Right.
restriction, it is still my property, but I can't work in there, right.
But your equipment's not gonna be in there.
No,
Yeah.
my equipment's gonna be sitting at that conservation restriction line, because there's gonna, now I'm gonna put the boulders there, so you'll be able to see a clear line where I can't cross.
So, because when we agree this means that you can go ahead and get going. It just has to be, this has to be a document that if you hand to someone, it's very spelled out. So I think you just have to designate particular areas where you can work with equipment. And are you hiring Oxbow to be your wetland scientist through the project?
Yes.
Okay, so of note, we would ask them to be the one that's recorded for the site in terms of the log of what's going on the site, in terms of how it's progressing, and also for plantings.
They'll do the monitoring reports.
That's what I meant to say.
How frequent are the monitoring?
So I had a question, so we've talked a lot about the boulders that are gonna go in, and having looked at some of the plans as well, and this is very kind of close to the property line. So the silt fence is currently located 8 to 10 feet within the conservation restriction. The majority of the material is settled in front of it. So I would propose that the boulders be pulled even further back out of the area to kind of bring your grade back. Because the grade that you have, I believe, doesn't impact a septic system, correct?
No.
Okay.
I haven't double checked it, but no, I don't think I didn't go
So
that far.
what was
because of the
originally
setbacks.
permitted, did it encompass that much grade right up to the CR?
Yeah.
Okay. But the boulder wall was not,
There's no more.
right. So my proposal is that you'd need to pull it back a little bit further so that there's an area of stability prior to the boulders. So you're saying the boulders are gonna be right on,
I'm gonna put them about a foot back. I mean, I wanna use as much property as I can, so I can't go into the conservation restriction, but I can go up to it, so I'll leave a foot, and I'll buffer. You're gonna have a, 2 to 3 foot, 4 foot rock.
can I see that for a second? So the place where you want to put your rocks is where?
It's just here. This is where that stake is.
So your grading that was proposed is where,
The proposed grading was here, but I went farther there. I
okay,
went less of a slope. To
right.
soften the slope, I went farther out.
So what's the scale on this?
40.
So what was proposed and what you did for grading is 40 feet closer, correct?
I don't know, I don't have a
That-
scale, whatever that is. I mean, I went up to my property line.
Right, but
And
what was approved is what I'm talking about. So this is what was approved, and that's your total slow at the 244 mark, correct?
For the septic system, that's what I need, the minimum I need for the septic. I can go farther than that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, what was originally approved through the Conservation Commission?
That plan in front of you.
So this plan, so,
I don't know, did conservation have to sign off on the septic?
Well, the grading, the septic, not per se, but there was a request for determination of applicability, because you can kind of see where the buffer zone is there.
so the buffer zone, so your grading is within the buffer zone.
The 100, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you were in front of us, and that's why we approved what is here. So ultimately, if you'd done an as-built, so this is,
Yeah,
this
so
is the
this-
buffer zone
Yeah,
here.
in this area here, I'm not in the buffer, so all that grading in the buffer is right where that restriction line, that's the whole slope we're talking about. We're not talking about this slope over here.
Right.
So that other slope
isn't
is
a
extended
question.
as well?
No, but what I'm saying is, so if this was approved, where's your lowest grading line that was approved?
It goes right to the conservation restriction line, it's right there, that condo, or that
Right on,
condo,
this is the original. Well, obviously, the grading didn't work of what you put down there, so my encouragement would be to back up a little bit more and put your boulders in, based on the impact that has occurred to the CR.
Yeah, I mean, the impact is because it wasn't stabilized, and, I was busy and didn't get to it as soon as I should have. So it's my fault for not getting the hill loomed and stabilized. I think if it's loomed, it'll grow and it won't be a problem. If I had done this a year sooner, we wouldn't be here. I can guarantee that. The slope's not that steep that it's not gonna hold up.
Does have any questions?
So you're saying that the bucket, or whatever the machine work will be, as far as
So
you
I can-
reach, parked here, as
Parked
far as you
here.
can reach, like 8 feet, you
It's-
said?
No,
20 feet,
it
you
goes
said.
about 20, but,
So how far in was that? How far in was 20?
yeah, this is,
2 centimeters.
20. About the 50-foot buffer at the closest.
Your report says that it'll be a single access point back to,
Well, once I get the slope grown, I don't want to be driving all over, so I'm going to drive in one spot, and I'll take all this stuff, work it in the middle, and then to the bucket. I'm not going to keep driving down a bunch of different spots and wreck what I've, get this whole slope stabilized, grown, eliminate the problem, and then clean up the problem. Low to high, work our way up.
so Sarah's point that it needs to be marked where your access point is.
I can,
That'll just be
I can
where-
have them do that, yeah, it's
where
right
the-
about where that stake is.
But will it be where the bucket will sit? Is that what
That's where the
the
machine-
access point is? It'll just be sitting and reaching from that access
Well,
point?
it's gonna
The
have to
machine's gonna
traverse up and down
Yes.
the line, isn't it?
Right. It's gonna go up and down the hill in one spot, go to my property line, at the conservation restriction line, and reach over and fill the bucket, and then it's gonna dry back up.
Because it looks like, okay, if it can reach 2 centimeters, it's not gonna be able to stay in one spot and reach everywhere.
Well, like I
There have
said,
to
you can
be
reach in and
Couple
it's,
spots.
I'm not gonna drive a couple spots. I'm not gonna wreck the slope.
All right, so
And you
you're
can
gonna
reach in and it can swing, it'll have a 20-foot radius.
And the rest
so-
will be handwork.
All of this is handwork.
And
Yep.
The
fur-
machine's only
further
just
up.
shortening the walk. It's gonna shorten the walk 20 feet, And just make it a
Okay,
little bit
'cause
faster.
that was my understanding from the flat bladed,
Just
that
a
you
skid
would
steer-
be
It's a
screening.
skid steer bucket, no. It's a skid steer bucket, it's basically a wheelbarrow.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna sit there just to throw the stuff in, so everything goes
Because
fast.
that's not what this says, though.
He says flat bucket, it's the wrong way, it's a bucket without teeth, I don't know why he's referring to it like he is, but it's just basically acting as a wheelbarrow. It's not doing any digging, it's just reaching over.
Okay, because what it says here specifically is, using a flat-bladed machine will be directed to depth by the wetland scientist and restored to the original grade.
That might just be on this, from the silt fence up where it's heavy. That 8 foot right now where it's too much to get by hand, we'll get that with the machine.
Okay. So the questions we have, so he stated that Oxbow will be doing the recording. I would move that out to be evaluated for a 3-year period. My suggestion would be to increase plantings, define access.
The plantings in there are just the wetland plantings, which is actually pretty small.
It's just this
portion of
area.
it. So I don't know if you
No,
want
but I think
plantings in the
in-
buffer zone upland.
Exactly,
The
any of that
CR.
area, definitely in the CR
CR is
area that was
I don't think I
impacted.
saw anything in here that would do that, that would plant in the upland area.
Right,
There wasn't, I mean, there's not much up there for plants, this is all pretty bare. There's some trees with some vines that are taking over and killing everything, so it's not like it's
How about since it's on the edge of a wood, right? Edge of a wood wetland, you plant some hedge plant, like dogwood or some other,
Service berry.
yeah, so this berry would be great.
I'll do whatever you guys want, as long as it doesn't, kill me. It's my problem, but I don't want to, I've already spent $2,000 doing a temporary slope stabilization. I just want to try to get this thing done. As
Can I just
inexpensive
coordinate
as I
with
can.
Oxbow about plantings in the upland piece of it? I mean, they may have something in mind that didn't make it through on paper, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, something was growing there before the toe of the slope was there.
And like I said, this is it looks like a big area here, but it's small areas inside of that, so it's little streams where the water was
One piece of it
running.
is a lot of goldenrod and.
This is the worst of it right here, right in front of the silt fence is the worst, and then just behind it is about 6 foot behind it.
but you
That's like
did have
6 inches.
some travel all the way down, though.
Yeah.
So we have to be very specific that there was impact further down.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
So-
but it gets thinner and thinner, and by the time you get to the wetlands, we're talking about a coating. So I'm not
Right.
talking about 6, when he says 6 inches, that sounds bad, but when you go out there, it's a coating.
I know, I was there.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Okay.
So, I don't know what the commission wants to do. I'm fine with letting Amy work on that, but I want to be clear that the applicant is approving additional plantings, and that a scientist will be there to monitor impacts.
And I can also, did I say this? Double check with Natural Heritage if they have any comments on this, because they're gonna be a little
Right.
slower probably to read it.
Okay.
I will submit my notes to Amy, because there are times that we talk about handwork just in the wetlands, but there may be times that we have to use handwork in other areas, whether it be the BVW or conservation restriction area.
Yeah, I'm sort of assuming everything outside the erosion controls is gonna be handwork.
everything from the
But
bottom of that
everything
silt fence.
inside the silt fence
is
is
machine
probably
work.
gonna be machine. Yeah. 'Cause it's fairly deep.
So I want to get from the silt fence, all the heavy stuff, pull it back, put the rocks in, establish that conservation line again,
Yeah.
and then get the slope seeded, loomed and seeded, and then do all the handwork.
Which
Preferably
again,
when
they
this
would
is a
start
little.
from the bottom and work up.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
spelled that out and put the hay bales in every night where we stop our work, but, preferably when it gets a little drier, so it's not mixing in while we're walking in there, pushing it back down.
So you have to, if you're going to approve this, go ahead and approve that with certain caveats, but then they can go ahead and start work on it, but Amy has to be alerted to what the schedule's going to be with that as well.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Meaning that you have to be told ahead when they're going to start this.
Okay, so
I can have.
hammer this out, but work can start Well, this is being hammered out?
Yeah, because I think the
I just want to
things-
make sure I'm hearing this. Yeah, okay.
I believe so, because a lot of this is plantings that can't go in until you've got the work done anyways.
And
So-
let me-
And you still have to clean up. all
I
the
just want to get the
sludge.
slope cleaned up while we have this next month as the
Yep.
growing season. So
Yeah,
get that
absolutely.
cleaned up,
Yep.
eliminate,
And let me just
the
double check
problem,
with Natural
and we
Heritage,
can
they're
work
at least
on-
okay with,
So I would encourage Amy to go ahead and talk to National Heritage and to have maybe Oxbow touch base, so the 3 or 4 of you before starting to scrape away. I would definitely keep on-site extra wattles, for sure. Just in case we get any of the rains.
so I'll be in touch with you, but I can start. When can I actually start? I'm going to give you a call before I start.
Yep,
Slope.
so you guys need to make a motion that you're gonna accept the conservation restriction wetland and buffer zone restoration area for 65 Hartwell Ave, subject to what's been amended here for, that Felix has mentioned.
So moved.
Good.
Do we hear a
So
second?
seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Fine.
Thank you.
Amy, do you want my notes?
I would love your notes.
Scratching.
Continued, 8:30. I think we're probably close enough on it. Continued notice of intent, 44 Bruce Street, R22-16, Mass DEP file number 204-864 for construction of a single-family home.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Jim Garland from GPR, representing the applicant, Sean Ian. This is Dave Crossman. The last time we were out on site, we had several areas that we want to identify and look at as far as additional wetland areas and additional areas that were springy. And Dave has gone out and done that. What you are looking at is, this is the existing conditions part of it. This is the very beginning part of the site where we were asking whether this had a hydraulic connection. Dave did a bunch of soil borings and looked at a non-hydraulic connected wetland. And there was a few other flags that he adjusted down here. And he also looked at the area down where the under drain was and added some flags down here for the wetland that was over between the two big houses. Dave can expand on what he found.
Yeah, so let's do what we did, let's walk like we did.
Here.
Yep.
I'm sorry, which way is north towards you?
This way, this way, yeah.
Yep. So we're gonna
This is where the
discuss from the
street is?
road in
Yeah,
like we did
I
on
just
the.
Started
had a-
here.
had a revert.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, when you come down, the property line is a stone wall. This actually rises up significantly to the wall, and then it drops back down into this, the pool of water that was there. The pool of water looks like it's above the stream, the little stream that's out there. And this, the blue line here represents the limit of the hydric soil that's in here, and it is very hydric in that area. This actually, when I did this, the whole area looked much drier than we had on the site walk, but there was still probably 3 or 4 inches of water out in this particular area. So I didn't find, there's it's mostly upland vegetation along the wall right through this area here, plums and pines and oaks, bittersweet. There's a lot of invasive upland plants, and buckthorn would be the wetland invasive in there. So there is a lot of, it just looks like a it doesn't border on the stream, but it does collect the water that comes down off that really steep slope, and then it kind of rises up into this flatter field right here. And the way the wall is built up in the area along this wall just kind of traps that water right in there.
So Did you submitted to Amy your field logs of your soils in there?
I have not, no.
Okay, so
But-
we would ask that those be submitted.
Okay.
And Dave, I'm sorry, what number is that near on the original wetland line?
I believe 50, I want to say 57 is at this end, and probably 51, 52, 53 or 54, somewhere up on that end.
Good enough. Thanks.
We came down here to this edge. There was the original wetland line kind of went through right down the edge of the fence. It does come over into the other fields, particularly at the bottom of this area. I don't know, it's hard to figure out why. The soils are pretty decent up in here, but they're horrendous just over the wall. So we brought the flagging, oh, not the wall, the fence. We brought the flagging from that flag at the corner out to Spruce Tree over here, and we brought it back in, and actually I eliminated another flag in here. There was, I believe there's another flag over here that we eliminated, so we just pulled this all the way out. So the water, the main water flows right through here. It comes down, flows in, and flows back on this side of the property line, but the soils extended 50 or 60 feet past where the water was flowing in that area. Then it hooks back out.
Dave, I'm sorry, what's the point, what's the new flag, or give me a reference?
The old flag is 64.
Yeah,
That's eliminated, and we've got a 64R, and that'll connect to, I think you just said
66.
66.
Yeah.
So we eliminate
Right,
65
60, yeah.
and 64. Good enough.
Sorry.
Then we come to that pipe and whatever they were doing down there to direct the water down this way. So all this area, this actually remained the same. The soils in here are really good all the way across here, about a 4.6 to a 4.4 to 4.6 in the B horizon. So I didn't really make any changes in this area. It does, the water comes into this ditch and it follows, I guess they look like they did something here. They piled all the rocks next to it, and then it flows across the field into this big wetland at the back. There is an area near that big wetland that's between the two houses on the adjacent property. Looks like there's a drainage, an area where water, surface water flows through here. It's all scoured down to stone. And then it comes in here, and it looks, I think it just goes back out into this area here. The soils in here were super glade right in this area. Then it's gold and gray right on the border. But this comes into here now. I cannot tell you what's going on with that pipe. You know, there's a surface, there's an outlet or an inlet. I don't know if it's outlet or inlet, but I'm assuming it's put there to drain. I would assume it's put there to drain this because there's no other place for that to go. You have the cul-de-sac here, you have a big house here, you have the driveway to this big house that cuts right across here, and I've been over there. I didn't see any outlet going in that particular direction. Not that they could, I mean, couldn't go on their property, so maybe there is something further into their property than I could see, but
So to the best of your knowledge, what you're stating is that you don't think that there's any connection, hydric connection between that wetlands and this wetlands over here, whether it be current status of man-made tiles and diverting the water down. Because I think we were led to believe on our site walk, because there were pockets of wet, whether it be spring-related or the time that we were there, that there were some areas that were wet that day when we were out.
well, I'm saying those particular areas weren't wetlands, but I believe there is a connection here
Right,
with that outlet, but I'm not sure exactly where it is below the surface.
But that's part of discovery, because I think you could tell that there's piping that,
Right, there's
or
a
some
pipe,
type
there's
of-
some type
of
of pipe
rock
that runs
structure.
through here.
Yeah.
Because you can see the outlet of
Yeah,
the
for
pipe.
sure. Yeah.
I'm assuming, I always assumed it was an outlet because the water's going this way, down in here.
And is this, you said there was scouring and everything there?
Um,
Does that mean that there's intermittent stream?
Yeah, it just looks like surface runoff coming, maybe possibly coming right off the edge of the cul-de-sac, right in this area.
There's scouring?
There's no channel that runs up there.
You seem to indicate that there was.
Well,
You said scouring down to rock.
well,
Is that a
it's,
channel?
yeah, I think there's a French drain there, is what I think. It looks like the top of a French drain. It's just a lot of pea stone that's in the area, right in through this area here. So it just picks up this surface water that runs into it, and then it just kind of peters out again. Now, I don't know if that, say it's a French drain. I don't know if it ties into the culvert somewhere over in here. It's all underground. I mean, the soils right on top of this are pretty decent. But somehow,
But I think we have, historic value of this property is that there are segments of it that are fairly wet, and whether they're spring-related or wetlands-related, that I think that's why we have to be very diligent to look at the discovery of that. We know that certainly with the Durkee property, there were some unknowns of that, and I think we're very, very cautious to make sure that we're being diligent with that. And I think the time of year was excellent when we did the site walk. I think it has obviously brought forth the movement of a couple flags. I am interested to see the field notes of up on the south portion of the property as well.
all right. And that was, I guess that was about it. So, I think the only way you could probably find out where this comes in is you dig it up, but then I'm afraid of breaking the connection, if somebody's gets too close to that.
That area over the stone wall has always been wet.
Yeah. Well, if you look over in there, there's some huge swamp white oaks.
It's always
in that
been wet, and then
area.
people,
Yeah.
from what we've heard from local lore, is that there's a lot of wet basements there as well. So that
On
there's
the
a
bottom.
high over
groundwater.
here, that there's high groundwater. What did you find for did you do testing last year or this year?
Last year.
During the drought, okay, during the drought.
It was incredible. The water, the groundwater was coming up, and we had just enough for the perk area to do the perk.
But that was during the
drought.
drought, that was during drought status for the
That
common.
was-
No, last summer.
2017
That
was,
was
I guess, 2 years ago now.
It was like
Yeah.
November,
So it
we
was
did
out-
that.
it was out.
Yeah.
And then we went out in
Yeah, it goes
December and
out
dug over here.
August, I think they expanded it.
It was way too wet.
It was wet. We did dug in December over here to see if we could move the system. But this was all done in November.
So when we were out, although I think that was out of our jurisdiction, there was a home that was over on this side that was being, a separate lot that was being taken out?
Yes.
So that one, okay. And so the septic for that is in front of it? Okay. And so there's no jurisdiction, so that's out of all your buffers?
Today. Yes.
Okay.
Still today.
Yeah, okay. I feel just with the complexity of this particular lot that I would certainly want someone else to look at the data and perhaps go out on site. And then if we can submit any of the data to Amy as well
Yep.
for record.
And be supportive of that, too.
Third-party review.
Mhm. Yep.
Green, is it still green?
Right. Okay. Is that
So
something?
you want to get them involved and then have them go out on the site, confirm?
Yeah.
and
Look
then
at your wetlands
Maybe another
flags.
sidewalk, or you're going to just rely,
Usually-
based on what we've seen already and what,
I think because Amy would probably go out or be in communication with whoever the third party is designated, and then I'd be interested to see the flags that moved. So,
I mean, at this point, we want to just agree on the line, and then we'll do the engineering and move things around.
But here again, you'd want a
afterwards,
third party
but-
to confirm
Yeah,
that line
absolutely,
as well.
right.
And that
That's
line
why
needs to
we're-
be confirmed with the soil data.
Yep, yep.
Okay. So if that's something that you're amenable to, that we would continue this, realistically, the next meeting is May 14th. I think it could be quick to get that turned around. The next meeting after that is June 4th. So would you like us to put you on for
May
the
14th.
May 14th?
Yes.
Okay.
So how do you want to proceed with the third party? I can go out and get a estimate from Green, or someone like Chuck Karen.
Mhm.
Should I go get two, unless there's somebody else you'd want to recommend to throw there? I would say Oxbow, but Oxbow's swamped, they're never gonna
Yeah,
get here.
this is their time of year. This is their
Oh,
time.
I know,
yeah.
they
Yeah.
won't take our calls either.
Yeah.
I think to certainly contact two. I think it's always competitive to get two.
Yep.
So I would support either of the two.
Your applicant knows he's paying, right?
We will in a minute.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Jim, I know.
That's the chairman's
Just so
duty, to
you
make
are-
sure everybody knows. Okay.
Whatever we gotta do, we gotta do.
Okay.
Okay.
And how do you want to proceed? Shall I just get these, run them by you,
Yes.
and then just go without?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay,
need our,
right.
our-
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
if you come up with a third name, let me know, and I'll do them all, and see Thursday.
I think the commission feels comfortable with the two names that were submitted.
Yeah.
I think if you add a third name, you would have to ask the commission,
Yeah, all right.
so.
I guess,
Fine with the two that were
Yeah.
mentioned.
I think the big thing's gonna be availability.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's pick the one that's more available.
Soil's a soil, so.
Right. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead for the 14th, and we can always move on from there.
Perfect.
Okay, so they will need some additional plans and
Yeah.
and data.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Can you give that back to Amy?
Can I have one of those?
I brought 11
Sure, have it. Oh.
copies too, but I didn't. I don't think there's no one copy. All right, thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
8:45, discussion of Kinghorn draft conservation restriction.
Congratulations to the commission on being precisely on time.
That's somewhat a
People are
miracle.
mailing like crazy, so.
Good evening, I'm Ray Lyons, and this is Joe Kinghorn. Parents are here, you can have a seat here.
I'll come up close.
Let's just wait till.
Sure.
I should just be right back. First day of spring.
It's a beautiful day.
Finally.
This has been the first weekend that I haven't had double layers on.
Oh, I know. Oh, it's still chilly this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, I did your mail 2 weeks ago.
Was it open?
Was it open?
Here's
How'd you do that?
copies
Did you do the whole
of my
thing?
comments
If you're in
and
there.
pieces of the red line version if you didn't print it out. I did not include Ray's responses to my comments, so.
Okay.
I have copies of those
Thank
too.
you.
Look at this now. Look at extras. you.
Do you have a plan there, Ray, if anybody want to look at it?
I do, actually. And I'll let you keep it when I'm done with the meeting here, because this one's probably more readable than the one you're circulating. Like, this is the one that the commission approved as part of the orders, and this is the one that goes with the conservation restriction.
Amy, do you want to go ahead and just do, or Ray, just to do an overview for some of the commission, because it's been a while?
Sure. So, a notice of intent was filed for this property for the construction of a single-family house, and because it's in a priority habitat area, it was sent over to Natural Heritage for review, and they issued a conditional no-take letter for the property. And basically, as part of fulfilling the conditions for the no-take, a conservation restriction has to be placed on most of the property. So this is the plan that went with the notice of intent. The plan for this is basically a no disturbance plan that'll be part of the final record. And I'm using this as the exhibit for the conservation restriction. It shows 4.9 acres around the house area. And, well, this is an earlier version. It shows the roadway coming in, and there's also a loop trail. Do I have one that shows? No, it's an earlier version. There's also a loop trail. So there's an exclusion area. The roadway and the loop trail are an exclusion area, and there is a 40,000 square foot area towards the beginning that is also an exclusion area. I looked at that. But everything else is subject to, will become subject to a conservation restriction that is based on the new models that the state has come up with, and will need to keep Natural Heritage satisfied. So I submitted a draft to the Division of Conservation Services and to Amy. Amy wanted to make sure that it went over to Natural Heritage, and she had some initial comments which she has circulated to you. And we're really here tonight just to make sure we have feedback from the commission if there's any things that you want to make sure that we're addressing as part of this process. It's nice to hear it early on than when we're trying to get signatures from you. I'm hearing that there's a hiccup. So I'm here for questions and comments.
Well, I guess I'm curious why and I can't picture how it all connects, like that little piece over near the road, and how does that connect to, is that just isolated little pocket, or is that connected to anything?
So, actually, I'm going to show you, it's unfortunately a smaller version, but it's the more up-to-date one. This is the frontage here on Nagog Hill Road.
Okay.
This is the roadway that comes in. If you've been to the property, you've been down this roadway that provides access. The house is being constructed here. And then there's a traditional trail that goes around the property that Joe uses to get around. And then there's also an area here that is being proposed to be a reserved potential house site.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was confused.
Yeah.
So these are really carved out of the conservation area? not-
Correct.
These aren't the conservation? I
If
was-
it's white, it's in the conservation
I see.
restriction area.
All right.
Except for the 5-acre piece, but yeah.
Right, so there's 29,
Right.
29.5 acres will be subject to conservation restriction, and I think it's 7.5 will not be. Here's the 4.9 area, roughly another acre here, and then there's roughly 2 acres in the road network and trail network.
So
And access to his house would be here?
Yeah, the primary access is up through here.
Yeah, okay.
And that's a gravel road that already exists? That's,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, there's some improvements to it as part of the notice of intent.
Okay. And so I'm just kind of comparing
Sure
this
thing.
to, so I read there's 7 vernal pools
Mhm.
on site. Is there the vernal pool habitat buffer? I can see the wetlands buffer of 100 feet, but I can't find the vernal pool habitat.
There might be the 300-foot, might not
Right.
show on that.
I believe that's the 300-foot line around vernal pools.
So the buffer, so that's a buffer, but you have the vernal pool, like, the
Right, so
vernal
then
pool
here-
plus the vernal pool habitat. So the vernal pool habitat is the upland area where the vernal pool species, have eggs and nests. So
Correct.
I'm especially, I just want to,
Mm-hmm.
it would be helpful to know where that line is.
So this is the edge of the wetland, this is the 50-foot disturbance area, this is the 100.
Of the
foot-
wetland.
Yes, of the wetland. My understanding, and I read Brian Butler's report on this, there's a whole series of open space and vernal pools that go up through this way. And if I read his report correctly, this tends to migrate this way, this tends to migrate that way. There's a vernal pool, I want to say E and F, that there is some transition between the two of them. But basically, this is an island with a ribbon attached to it that goes out to the road with open space all around.
Well, right, and then this, just short of an acre, 0.92 acres here, so that's.
Correct.
So that's what I'm asking about, is that's
Right.
within the vernal pool habitat.
Understood.
Okay. That's what I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to match.
I think it's
match
hard
up.
when you look at those plans, or it's things,
Really hard to
just to be
see.
color-coded so you can kind of feel your way around.
One of the things I like about this plan is it gets real simple as to what's in and what's out of the conservation restriction.
Right, but it doesn't have the vernal
Understood.
pools on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah,
is,
and
which is,
the-
which is why Heritage is most
Yep.
Sure.
interested
Exactly.
in the property.
Mm-hmm.
And the vernal pool habitat area is considered the resource area, so it's not a buffer.
Right.
So, yeah, how close would it get to that property, this property here? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, that's the buffer. That's the wetland line.
The no disturbance zone,
It'd be
So it
to
looks
here,
like this
and
property
then it
goes
would
to
be
there,
Yep,
goes
follow.
here, yeah.
75.
the exclusion zone
Yeah,
we
this is
created there
probably-
goes to the
yes.
50-foot line.
It's in there.
Mhm.
That's why the exclusion zone has kind of a funny line on it.
Yeah.
It's the 50-foot buffer from the BBW.
Amy made that suggestion, and it was a good one, and so we ran with it.
Okay.
I think seeing the vernal pool as like the whole habitat area would be important to see. As it's a jurisdictional area, the vernal pool plus the 100-foot vernal pool
Mhm.
habitat, so that's the resource area, not the buffer, and then with the 300 feet go out beyond.
I think they've got enough data that they can pull that out for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I think that their engineer can pull that out easily.
Very quickly.
So could you repeat for me what it is you're looking for? Just so I make sure I understand.
The vernal pool habitat, which
Yeah.
is 100 feet from the vernal pool boundary.
Okay.
It's not shown, so I know there's a lot of lines, like the
Got it.
wetlands are
So
shown.
this is all keyed off the wetlands, not off the actual vernal pool?
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
Understood.
Yep.
Ray, I just had a quick question on the verbiage. I saw that a lot was struck out. Where did the original wording come from?
So the original wording I started with was the new model conservation restriction from the Division of Conservation Services.
Okay.
As I look at it, I think a whole lot of the reason it was crossed out is because where Natural Heritage has it in their model is in a different location than where
Okay.
DCS has it in theirs, so when you move it around,
Okay.
Microsoft Word just sees it as all new stuff.
Okay.
So I do have an email from Misty Ann at Natural Heritage saying, in a sense, don't worry too much about that.
Mhm.
We'll work over that. I will be interested in their comments about specificity.
Right.
My starting point, original starting point was a conservation restriction that they approved last year.
Mhm.
But it was for a property that was subject to a conservation management permit.
Correct.
And as I
And-
got
and
into
this-
it, it
and
was
this
just
is
getting
not,
to-
yeah.
it was just seemed to be. just-
It's hard to compare
it
apples
was-
to apples.
It was too much. So I went to the DCS model. I suspect there'll be a little back and forth between Misty Ann and I of things, because I drew a whole bunch of things out of that one that was prepared for the conservation management permit last year
Right.
that I thought were pertinent, for example, for blue spotted salamanders. It won't surprise me if Misty Ann has some other things that she wants inserted in there.
I was trying, and I asked Andrew earlier, who's the most current CR that the Conservation Commission has? Is it the Cobb property? Because I was thinking like Sanders, but the town has that one,
Drive is me, I don't.
and that's fairly old
That-
language.
That's fairly old.
I was just trying to think if there's a model.
The Smith property, which is Woodland Conservation Trust and SVT, is the most current in town.
So the one I started
That
with
was
last year.
amended, so it's all.
Right. So the one I started with last year was approved by Natural Heritage late summer, early fall last year.
In our community?
No.
Okay.
There's another community. But both Natural Heritage and DCS have both come up with new models since the first of this year.
Okay.
What surprises me is that there wasn't perhaps a little more.
But no collaboration.
There wasn't as much collaboration as I would have hoped between the two.
How old is the Smith property CR?
Well, it was an amended CR, so it's pretty much brand new. Did you work on that?
I did. I
Yeah.
drafted it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
So
know more about
that
it than I
one
do.
was about a year and a half ago. And the town has an option to buy that conservation restriction still. Just
Mhm.
probably has another year to go on its option. But it has not gone through the full approval process
Oh,
yet.
it hasn't, okay.
It hasn't. There was a whole bunch of turnover in the Division of Conservation Services with their reviewing people.
Oh.
And so I got a call one day saying, do we really need to push on this one? And I said, well, if the town starts to push exercise its option, there's a sample that's attached to the option that if you buy, you get, but that has not been through the whole vetting
I was
process.
thinking, the Wilderness Road, the,
Neff?
yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
it's
That would-
03. I don't know if Cobb came after that.
And there was no habitat.
Correct.
All right.
So it's just
I think
wondering-
I think it's unique to just find the language for habitat, which is what Misty Ann will.
Yeah, I expect Misty, if she doesn't, when she has a chance to really dig into what I got, I'm actually hoping she'll go, this is fine. And if it doesn't, I'll be all ears as to what she might want to have inserted.
Amy had made some comments which I thought were well thought. Have you had a chance to?
Oh, we've had an exchange. So I got her comments, and she's seen my thoughts about her comments.
Okay, do you want to just share those with the commission?
Sure. Maybe getting into the lower part, the main text. So Section A generally is the prohibitions, and generally we try not to change that very much at all. We try to go and have the changes be in the permitted uses section, which is Part B. So she's noting that it excludes uses of ATVs. Yes, it also excludes dumping and construction and almost every other thing you can think of. I did note that we're reserving the right to put in a potential second house on that exclusion area, and that if they want to do that, it's going to have to go through all the zoning and other regulatory process, including filing a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. Then she has some, in the permitted uses, she's got some thoughts about, just noting for you that it allows the creation of woods roads and fence lines and trails, rather than just maintaining what's already there. She knows.
But that would be out of the habitat for the vernal areas, correct?
No.
This is work in the CR, so it doesn't really refer to whether it's in the vernal pool or not, or adjacent to the vernal pool.
So these things that are permitted uses are things that could happen as far as the conservation restriction is concerned within the area that has the wetlands and the vernal pools. Keep in mind, you're going to be wearing two hats on this property.
Yeah.
One is the holder of the conservation restriction, and then the other one is your regulatory one under the Wetlands Protection Act and the town's wetlands bylaw. So just because the conservation restriction says something can be done doesn't mean that you have given up your regulatory powers
Yep.
over that activity. I have to write the conservation restriction in mind of whatever the law is forever. This is the yes and no, but your police powers remain intact.
Now, I see on number 6, and the reserve rights.
You're jumping ahead a little bit.
Oh, sorry, you're still in the,
But that
That
has
was
to do with the
B1.
trails and wood roads.
Mhm.
yeah. Well, I have a question, one question earlier than that. The reserve rights and exceptions, is that?
What page you
where
on?
you are? On page 7, number B1.
Oh, you're in the conservation restriction itself?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I attached that to their stuff.
No? I guess I lost track of where you were then. Were you earlier than that?
Yeah, it's
I
on
thought
the
you
front
said-
page.
We're on the
Well, I
very
thought-
first page.
But I thought he said that he kept most of it.
We're on-
And most of that was.
We're on Amy's
exceptions.
document. We're on Amy's document.
Go to the, we're on that one, the summary document. If you want detail, you can
The
have detail.
comments? Oh, yeah, I went into the details.
There you go.
I went straight into the details.
Quite all right.
So sorry, continue, and I will catch up with what you want.
Amy's noting that the CR as proposed allows composting within 20 feet of wetlands, and notes that the boilerplate language is 100. I think that there's different kinds of compost piles. If it's associated with a farm, you definitely want 100 feet. But if it's woody material, in my experience and observations, 20 feet is adequate.
But under the ag regulations, you can't even get closer than 25.
Okay.
I mean, you would be allowing something that's not even allowed in agriculture.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess part of my thought was making it easier to, this property is so laced with wetlands that I was thinking of making it as easy as possible to find places that would be appropriate. Do you
I
think?
would think of at least 50, because we have 50 no disturb. At least 50 feet.
So this is compost, this is stuff that's just gonna decompose over time?
This is,
Still,
but if, are you
It's
gonna manage this
disturbing.
as a tree farm?
There's
you-
no tree farm on the property.
No, but I was wondering if he's gonna manage it as a wood.
The conservation restriction does allow for forest management.
right, but still, if the boilerplate is 100, can you make it 50 instead?
I guess what I would ask you is to think
Or you
about
can
your.
keep it at 100, I mean.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I mean-
It's-
but to be consistent with our bylaw, it would be 50. No
He's willing
disturb.
to give you 100 feet, why you?
If it's 100 feet, I think you're effectively
Giving him
prohibiting it
20,
from the
Jim.
property. And
Yeah.
at 50 feet,
20,
you may be
not 100.
prohibiting it from the property.
Okay. So
So
that's-
can you look at that?
That sounds
See
like,
what happens.
yeah, but keep going, it just sounds like one to talk about.
She knows that I took out the language about being able to plant native trees and shrubs. I gave a seminar with another attorney last month at the Mass Land Trust Coalition, and part of it is just a lot of conservation restrictions are just ending up with a whole lot of things where you go, why do we need to say that? And one of the things we picked on is, why do you need to say the person has to follow the law? Because everybody has to follow the law. And why do you need to say that someone can plant native trees and shrubs? Because, well, why wouldn't they be able to do that? If you want it back in, it's not a big deal, but I'm finding that conservation restrictions are just getting so thick and dense that they're becoming next to impossible for people to read. And so I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for lay people, landowners, conservation commission members, et cetera, to be able to read a conservation restriction and not get bogged down in the details. B6 is noting that this allows the construction and relocation of trails and wood roads with your approval. It allows for new fences without your approval, and she knows,
Yeah.
and she knows that there's no limits on how many are designed. Actually,
And on B6, I notice that the boilerplate says it's only maintaining, it's not creating new.
it's a large property. This is something in perpetuity. Fences deteriorate. Fences, there's need for change, for them to change. As my understanding, the key species on this property are blue-spotted salamanders. Most fences will allow them to get from one place to another.
But it doesn't say what kind of fences.
I'm
Habitat-
open.
you have
So
to-
it's
you
all
then
right.
have to define the habitat corridor.
Actually, I like, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's something that we did at Durkee in terms of defining that.
Okay. Um, So B9 talks about other power-driven mobility devices, and this gets into the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Architectural Barriers Act. This is actually a federally defined term. Joe happens to use an OPDMD to get around the property. He has a vehicle that helps him get around this trail. And Amy's note is it's not clear if friends could use their ATVs in accompaniment. The way it's written says they can be used by people lawfully authorized to do so. So that would mean, Joe, at this present time, it would not mean anybody else, because you need to be the person who has a disability to use the vehicle. I would hope that as the holders of the conservation restriction, that you would have some leeway so that Joe could actually enjoy using the trail with his friends, with his family. You know, you have discretion in how you enforce that.
And you're talking on the trails, though, anyway.
Correct.
so, Yeah.
Correct.
They're just what, like, then I guess they wouldn't be like crossing wetlands for
'Cause they're
trails
on-
type of
Yeah,
thing.
because they're
Right.
on the
You
road,
can't get
they're
it.
on the trails that
It's
are
on
already
the road,
defined,
okay.
there's already culverts there, so it's.
Got it, okay.
on-
Although it doesn't say that.
That's a
Doesn't
good
say-
point, so maybe Ray can,
Yeah, I
It's-
think
it's
we're
what-
gonna need a
clarity.
good baseline report on what the trail conditions are.
Yes.
Are salamanders crossing the
Correct.
roads and all that sort of stuff.
Correct.
And I guess that has to tie back into 2A6, the exclusion of ATVs. You'd probably need some kind of wording in there. Because,
I think I already have it, but we can double check
okay,
it.
all right, yeah,
Yeah.
if you think you do.
So Joe, they referred to a baseline documentation report, just to make sure we're all on the same page. That's another document that's going to get reported. Most likely, Amy is going to do a lot of the work, but I'll be doing it with her. We are going to be going out in the property, we'll be doing a lot of photographs. And noting,
can we clarify, Amy won't be doing any
Yeah,
of that
I-
work, so
Fine.
that is not
I
her
didn't-
job. Amy is happy to look at what you submit, along with other commissioners, this is not her job to do so.
actually, that's fine. I usually do, I thought I saw an email saying that she wanted to prepare it. I'll be pleased to prepare it. So this will be.
I never said that. Well, I never meant to say that, I put it that way.
Fair enough. So this will be, it's actually a very detailed report that I will be preparing. It becomes part of the permanent record, and it shows, it will be lots of photographs and showing in various spots of the property what's going on there now. And it's called a baseline because they'll come out once a year to monitor and update it. And if suddenly, say, a house shows up over here, they'll have good documentation to show that wasn't there when we started all of this. And then they have those photographs as part of their enforcement action. So that's part of this process.
But would you be working with someone on that who can do all the vegetation and all that stuff? Vegetation.
We want a good BDR, yes.
Yeah.
Sudbury Valley trustees would be a good resource to who they use,
So, well, yeah.
or good a thing. Not reinventing the wheel.
Correct. Amy, you've got a note here about forestry and roads versus vernal pools. I'm sure you can't put a forestry road through a vernal pool. She does note that the forest management plan is not subject to the grantee's approval, and that is correct. That's because it does require it to be prepared by a licensed forester. So, and of course, when they file the cutting plans that are associated with that management plan, you will get those as well. And did I cover everything I really need to cover here, Amy?
Yeah, and I would also say, these are preliminary comments.
Yes.
I spent maybe an hour going through this, so I haven't looked at it in detail. And I didn't go past this page, because I figured that's the attorneys, all the estoppels and all that stuff. I'm not touching it. So town council will need to go through this.
But
Sure.
Anna had some questions,
Yeah, back to,
on page 7 or
B1.
something?
Yeah.
What'd you say, B1?
And it was in the section you guys were talking about, but it was looking at the document itself.
Yeah.
It says, for some reason you crossed out, and maybe you guys talked about this and I was reading it or something.
What page are you on, Anna?
Page 7,
Mhm.
number B1.
Mhm.
It says you crossed out the selective minimal removing, and you said removing brush. Any reason why you are wanting to be more than minimal removal vegetation?
Well, the property can be forested. I don't know if Joe has any plans to do it, but there are times when, for a variety of reasons, ranging from habitat enhancement and protection to something new that happens, it's useful to remove vegetation.
But didn't you have another section that had to do with forestry?
So I think what you're looking at is the comparison of what I prepared based on the DCS model compared to the natural heritage model. I didn't necessarily change anything. It's just a difference between the two models. I think that's.
I thought this was the DCS model.
I based it on the DCS model, and then I sent you a comparison of what I prepared on the DCS model to what Ms. Deanne sent me about the natural heritage model.
So, for instance, in B1, where it's new text for creating and maintaining vistas, that is that your language that's being added, or is that natural heritage said you can in their baseline?
I believe this is.
You can take that.
I believe this is my change based on the DCS model.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, where in here does it say about forestry versus just this is vegetation management?
That's on page 9.
Which is, I would assume, everyday or maintenance rather than forest. Like, if you were actually gonna remove trees for money or for selling the wood, that's
Yeah.
different than just everyday maintenance of.
Yeah, but that's also healthy forestry as well.
Forestry is on
So
page
for-
9.
Yeah, forestry,
Oh, 9, page 9.
and he's gonna have to have a permit if he does forestry anyways.
It'll be.
So, and that could be
number
health
10.
management of the forest.
Well, that's, I
But
just
you
wanted to
also
make.
could be doing invasive species stuff that could crop up. You don't wanna,
To put it in
But
basic,
that's also dealt with in another section.
in basic terms, if a tree falls down, I'm gonna have the right to remove it.
But that's selective minimal removal. I just think that having a broad brush ability to remove anything you want is not what we want in the property either. Selective minimal removing of brush.
Yeah, I think what, I mean, yours is
appropriate.
just maintenance and that, which
It's
is,
general maintenance.
exactly,
It's not
but,
going in with
but
the-
that clause is
with the chainsaw
is
and
different.
Cutting everything down.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
tree
Yeah,
branch
the-
falls down, especially
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah, and
No,
you
this
you can
doesn't
do
say
that,
that.
I think that's.
This
well,
That's
doesn't say that.
maintaining, but this says creating,
Right.
so that's two different.
So there's two different parts to the sentence. The part that says selective minimal removing that I removed talks about pruning and cutting to prevent, control, and remove hazards, disease, insect, and fire damage, or to preserve the present conditions of the property. And then I added, and you could also do this to build wood roads, fence lines, and trails. So selective minimal removing for wood roads and fence lines, I don't know, it just seemed like more words than were necessary to say what needed to be said.
But this talks about creating wood roads, fence
Sure.
lines, and trails.
So I guess I have a thought
Don't
regarding.
have to think too, that this is like 20 years from now,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, this is, yeah, and actually that's kind of the, sort of the point that I've been thinking about that's, Amy's comments about taking out language about being able to plant native trees, boilerplate about compliance with zoning permits, and then just, discussing, selective minimal removing, I absolutely appreciate, trying to simplify and making things implementable. But I do have some concerns regarding balancing that with, as I'm sure you're aware, as a regulatory body, relies on the document in front of them at the time
Sure.
for implementation of practices. And so if it doesn't say it,
Mhm.
20 years down the line, or, there's some confusion, what interpretation is going to be able to be taken. And so that's kind of my thought on
I will share this with
on
you.
that.
As a lawyer who's litigated,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I gathered that. Mm-hmm.
Selective minimal removing are words that people can litigate for months.
Sure. Yep.
And so I prefer to have as direct, clear language as I can. It doesn't mean I'm saying I won't go back to what they suggested, but I am suggesting to
Sure.
DCS that they actually need to be thinking about what some of their terms are, because it's no fun litigating these things.
The trouble is that I see is that that's a very broad statement right there, vegetation management, that has no approval, no nothing. It seems like you could create, although you do have a different section that says trails and wood roads that addresses approval, grantees approval, but looks like you could do any amount of brush removal and pruning you want without any approval from.
Under the conservation restriction, perhaps, you still have your regulatory powers. They would still have to, if it's a large enough.
But that's only within our jurisdiction. I mean, it's without,
And if it's not if it's not within 100 feet of a wetland, how much concern is there?
if this is a
Like
CR.
300
That's
feet
where
from
the
a vernal
salamanders
pool.
are living.
The salamanders are predominantly living within a 100-foot area around a vernal pool.
This is a conservation.
So I'm hearing you, and it's really, I'll put it back to where it was.
And it's tough, because you'll see this in a lot of CRs, is fences will be listed in like 3 different places.
Yeah.
And if you don't read the whole thing, you miss like that last thing that has a twist in it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to.
My talk at the Mass Land Trust Coalition meeting last month was on exciting boilerplate clauses and conservation restrictions. And it was a very lively discussion. Brian Butler was there. He had some great questions and suggestions. And I'll probably be circling back with him on this. So, yeah, there's a lot of weeds that we can get into in the boilerplate, and this is largely boilerplate.
Yeah, but this as Amy pointed out, this is creating a wood road, and without any approval, and it
Yeah, I
conflicts
saw that.
with that other paragraph that says to create a wood road, you have to go in front of the grantors. You have 2 conflicting paragraphs.
Not necessarily. So if it says you have to come before this board to put in a woods road, just, then he needs your approval. It's just saying that if you need to cut brush in the process of doing so, he can do so. I'll put it in. It's not
Spoken like an attorney, that is very good. Sorry.
I think
That was
some of
all-
I feel like this is your wheelhouse, right? Debating the intent of words, and, so having words where, I think the intent of a conservation restriction is to, maintain the quality of habitat, maintain the quality of the environment. And so I would say I would be in favor of retaining or using words that are consistent with that intent,
Mhm.
and not removing words that are consistent with that intent unless there's a clear reason to do so, and a thought process concerning unintended consequences in the future.
Okay, noted.
So I guess to a degree, what you need to decide is, would you allow new wood roads or not? In which case, you
fire
need to,
roads at some point.
you need to,
I would allow it.
It's
If
pretty well covered.
If it's with approval,
But you don't know.
I agree with that. So I would take out any part about creating a wood road, just say, because it says that preserve present condition, including vistas as documented in the baseline survey, wood roads, like, this is inherently changing the intent of this paragraph entirely.
Not really, but
Well,
I hear you.
substantially.
I'm going to tell you, this is a conservation restriction in perpetuity, and you got to think in terms of perpetuity, and the land will change. Think of how much this land has changed in the past 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, and 200 years. It will continue to change and evolve, and I do try to write a document that I think will speak to time, where the water flows and where the salamanders migrate through could easily change over 50 or 100 years, and you might want to be able to change a road to mitigate for that or for some other reason. And I'm trying to say that there's a process that would allow Joe and successor owners to be able to do that.
Well, I mean.
Without having to amend the
We
conservation
do have a paragraph
restriction.
saying that you can create a road if you need to, with our approval. But I would say change, I agree with you to change back the vegetation management to the way it was initially.
I hear you.
And I think in the composting section, I think, can we add the vernal pool habitat? I think that needs to be addressed for the composting.
So composting will not happen in.
In the vernal pool habitat.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's not addressed. And you said you were going to look at what a 50-foot buffer would do, consistent with our bylaw,
Correct.
and we can discuss it
Mhm.
if it's.
I
Composting is a
think this
good activity.
conversation warrants a quick email to Miss Deanne to tell her, I just don't want to take up all of her time when we're going to give her an amended. So you may want to tell her on track that there will be amendments coming, so that I feel as though.
Yeah, I like to see if we
Just-
can get sort of a global review from her, which is kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what this is.
But that she
And
doesn't
actually,
have to
it also
dot
does occur to me.
everything.
The existing Wood Road is excluded from the CR.
Correct.
Um,
That's right. So yes, I actually am looking forward to getting Ms. Deanne's
Right.
comments. I'm actually hoping that I've incorporated all the stuff in the CR that Natural Heritage
But
is
to
looking for.
incorporate what you've heard this evening as
Mhm.
well, just to give her a heads up that there's going to be some amendments.
The no-take was based on different exclusion areas, and then the order of conditions was based on
Right.
that as well,
Correct.
so now things are shifting.
Yeah, they have to wear their regulatory hat in reviewing this as well.
I'm also guessing that the chances of getting this signed, sealed, and delivered by when you need your occupancy permit, the
We're
chance of
aiming
that
for
is
Sep-
probably slim.
We're
So
aiming-
at some point, you may need to discuss if you're going to release the occupancy permit if this has proceeded far enough. But right now, the order of conditions is written that you will not sign off on the occupancy permit until this is, I forget what the actual word was, completed. or
Recorded.
Recorded, I think recorded was the word.
We're not gonna need occupancy until the release next year.
Okay, well then,
Yeah, I think we have.
oh, for some reason, I'm thinking this fall, so,
Yeah, I have everybody
Would that be
aiming for
nice, yeah.
September.
Okay.
I have everybody aiming for September. But
then never mind.
part of the process is keeping the process rolling. If
Yeah.
we tell everybody it's not till next
We
year.
would appreciate
then
that.
Then it will not be looked at until January, and really, we want to have the conversation, we want to keep the conversation
We wanna
rolling.
get
Next
it.
week, yeah.
Yeah.
I have your notes and your suggestions, and any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And you're going to get a plan that does,
Show all the vernal pool
what
habitat.
you had requested?
Yes.
The habitat areas and then the new buffers
Correct.
around the vernal pool
Mhm.
habitats. Thank you.
Yep, I have that.
Okay.
So the next steps are be providing that plan, everyone's talking to Natural Heritage, and then we'll circle back, I guess, maybe in June. I don't know if you want to try to
incorporate
this on the 14th, or,
I think
I
it
think
depends
we-
on how quickly she gets back to you.
Exactly. When we hear from Ms. Deanne, I want to sort of sit on what she's saying and work it through, and then come back to.
I would just need to know by May 2nd, so I can set the agenda,
Understood.
so. Let's see.
I'm
what
sure it
happens.
will not be your
All right.
next meeting. A month from now is probably optimistic. So I'm making a note on this plan, get current copy to Amy.
So the meeting after that is June 4th.
June 4th sounds like a realistic date to aim for. And thank you. That will help keep it moving along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like to open the public hearing notice of intent for 1 Spruce Road, 813 DEP number 204-8, section for subdivision construction of a three single-family homes in the buffer zone.
Good evening. For the record, Brian Goodger with Ranger Associates. David
Oh, it's
Guthrie.
colored.
Ooh, it's laminated. It's shiny.
Yeah, I can shut my.
This is never changing.
This
So-
means it's permanent.
This is not the plan we.
This is
we'll be
not the
presenting.
plan that we ended up
Thank
with.
you.
So what I'd like to
It
do.
isn't, or it is?
Well,
No, that's
No,
the part
not
that
we're
we're.
starting his
We're gonna-
presentation with it.
Yeah, we're gonna go with a couple of different,
Just give us the scenario that's gonna happen.
So, a little history. We were back before the commission back in 16. This specific plan has been floating out there since late 2016, and we've made a number of changes very, very recently. This is specific to phase one. This is Fur Lane here. This is the balance of case, so I want to be transparent and kind of discuss the entirety of the project, even though the notice of intent is specific to these three lots. We will be filing additional notice of intents for the balance of the work, so.
Property line?
Property line is right here. These three lots are right here. So this is.
So we struggles to find the property line on that side.
Yeah, so this plan has been before the town, very recently with the planning board. We actually had a series of meetings, and we had an informal meeting with several of the commissioners to discuss alternatives. If you look at the original plan, we're actually going out onto Grimes Lane, and this necessitated a wetland alteration. We met with the fire department, we met with the planning board, we met
That's why
with
you didn't
members
show
of
the
this
first one.
commission, and we eliminated that
For the
connection.
record.
And as a part of eliminating that connection, we eliminated all work within the
Yeah.
50-foot. Notice there are all alterations within wetland resource areas, and now we're dealing with a buffer zone only project. So, phase one is here. This is the notice of intent that is before you. It's anticipated this section will be phase two, up through this cul-de-sac. Phase three will be back here. There are no resource areas or buffer zone associated with phase three. One, two, three. And then phase four, heading down towards Grimes Lane, which will have very limited buffer zone impacts with potentially 2 or 3 lots that are associated with that. The plan that was submitted is this 20-scale plan here. So we have 3 lots located off of Fraser Street with a new cul-de-sac. The buffer, the 100-foot buffer is the line that has several circles on it. So these 3 houses are located within buffer, and then limit of work is inside of the 50-foot notice there. The primary reason for grading on these 2 lots is a walkout for the basement, a septic system, and then the same thing on this lot here, septic system. Lot 33K has very, very limited buffer zone impacts, so it's really focused more on just these 2. Now, with respect to kind of the area, we have a high point here, and runoff generally sheds to the wetlands towards the rear of the project. The section at the front naturally slopes towards Fraser Street and Durkee Farm Estates. So a new road is proposed, a couple of catch basins tying into the existing drainage system that's out there, and then associated improvements associated with these 3 single-family houses.
So basin forward.
This is basin
Yes.
4 right here.
Okay.
Yep. Back behind lot 12,
Right.
and on the left-hand side. So essentially, we'll be putting in some catch basins and.
So are you tying into, that?
As it's proposed right now, there's a manhole located within an easement on lot 12, and we're going to be coring into that manhole for these 2 additional catch basins. Now, it's important to note that we are currently revising kind of the global drainage scheme of K-Estates as a part of this revision from what was proposed previously, and we're going to be issuing that shortly to Green International, who's reviewing the drainage design. At that point in time, that's when you'll likely be seeing the 2 additional phases and the 2 notice of intent, so we can get into the discussion of those as well. This is kind of a standalone section of K Estates because it's surrounded by the resource areas. It's 3 lots with the balance of the 18 lots being associated with that.
The wildlife corridor,
Wildlife Access Corridor A.
is that on, there
Block
again, my
12.
property lines, that is on Durkee?
It is on Durkee, correct.
And it's going into K.
And it's going into K.
Yep.
And if you take a
No,
look
it
at this.
doesn't, it actually stops right there on the line.
And if you take a look at this dark
There's a
line
stop sign right there.
surrounding.
Possible.
Possible. If you look at the dark line that's indicated on this plan, this is a land donation that Dave can speak to a little bit more in depth, but there's 11 acres and change that will be donated as a part of this project to the town of Littleton. I'm not sure who it's under the care of, whether it's selectmen or planning or this commission, but this wildlife access corridor will directly abut, open space, if you will, just land, remaining land to be deeded to the town.
Can you remind me how it was originally termed, that wildlife access corridor, is that considered open space that people can use as access? How is that
So,
deeded?
It's
I know this
via
was a long
via
time ago.
easement. So it was specific to habitat and vegetation and not putting structures there. And then we
Okay.
went through kind of a
Like
bit
no
of a discussion.
no trails either, though, right?
Correct.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just trying, it was
It
so
was
long ago.
specific to landscaping and then defining our limit of tree clearing. Essentially, we went access corridor by access corridor to understand what would be appropriate for those specific areas. So this is generally part of the field right now, and it's gonna remain in that state. And I believe we did have some sort of native grasses and low-lying ground cover, berries and things of that nature that were gonna be planted on that. But as you move into the K open space or land donation, it's gonna remain in its current state. So with the exception of very little grading that needs to happen for the construction.
There's 2 trails easements on that parcel as well.
That's all wetlands from.
It is not all wetlands. If you look at this plan, we have all upland on the western portion. There's a small upland area in the back section, and then, yes, the balance of it is.
So it goes into or upland here and then wetland.
Yep, wetland to upland
And
to
this is
upland.
this is the conservation gift?
That's the land donation, if you will, the areas that
Can
are
you
not
just
indicated
highlight
in
for me, so I'm just trying to think as an animal or habitat would do. So it's gonna come here, it's the only thing that we have to protect. It's
She
gonna
does
come
it so well.
here, but I wanna know, so where does grading stop? So I'm just trying to visualize how this goes and how ultimately we can work on plantings or something here to have guidance
Mhm.
to go that way. Can you just
So
highlight,
right
so
now, this is
where's-
the erosion control line,
Okay,
right there.
yep.
And this is a bit of I don't know if it's ledge or it's a bit of a hill. So you're at elevation 290 here, you're down at elevation 270. So there's a 20-foot change in elevation right here. So what we're doing is we're basically cutting the slope enough to get the road in, and then this grading is gonna be, whatever needs to happen, and that will determine the limit of it.
So this
So we're
grading
not
is just for
strictly
the
for the
street?
road, correct.
Okay.
So is this wildlife corridor supposed to end up at the farm pond?
This is open space E, so there is contiguous kind of
So
ways
when
across
you
that.
bring the next plan in, can you just do an overlay so that we could just highlight it so you know basically how it is gonna tie in to
Highlight
Durkee?
this wildlife access corridor,
Exactly.
the fact that this whole section is open space, we got another access.
Right, but they're gonna
corridor right
cross a
there.
road,
They do.
so, and the guardrail and,
Right.
so,
Oh, is there a guardrail there? On both sides or just one side?
probably will be there, won't it?
Oh, there's one here, right?
It's just on the
Yeah.
front side.
Just
Yeah.
on the,
Yeah, sorry, Anna.
Perhaps that corner.
Yeah. So you got the top and then.
Mhm.
So we can certainly highlight this.
think the only, well, I don't know how much money. I think the only wildlife corridor that really has any tangible value is this, that really stays undisturbed. I think you guys walked it a little bit when we were out there. And we modified it, brought it sort of up here, and it remains undisturbed. I mean, this is,
But we can help with nesting or something over here too, so
Through
the
vegetation? Okay.
wildlife doesn't have to be just the four-legged guys.
Mhm.
So that we could try and help buffer that a little bit more, which actually might benefit that house
yeah.
there, so, or look at, not turkeys. Or just look at that wildflower area, like a pollinator area or something.
Yeah, I think where we have the slope here, you certainly, this easement comes with us. Of course. You know, so we have the ability to kind of extend whatever you think is the vegetation that.
Right, so that's why I
drives it.
think, like,
Yeah.
if we just had a separate plan,
Yep.
that was, it
Highlight
was just all
this to
conceptual,
those
it's like,
open
I think that
space.
helps us when we're looking at how do we build out those order of conditions for that particular lot and buffer. I think we're losing a lot of the screening, and so certainly some of the trees that some of the smaller animals need to kind of have for protection as well.
Mhm.
Can I ask these questions?
To the chairman. Just, if you can identify yourself, please, to the microphone, or a microphone.
My name is Ming Zhang. I live in lot 12.
Yep.
Right behind that, yeah.
Yep.
I guess the question I have is, more concerned me is where is the street is going to come in? Are there any structure that I can identify?
So if you look at lot, you know how you have a foundation next to you?
Yes.
It's in between, so it'll be to the left of that foundation.
Is there a center line there or a catch basin out on Fraser that you can
The catch
identify?
basin,
I
yes.
know there's a stone drain. Is it?
Yeah, so if you look at those stone drains, still to the left, these are the catch basins right here.
Mhm.
And then you can see two manholes here and here, and the road will be in between those.
Yeah, so if you look for that manhole, that would be
It'll
the
on-
best way.
Yeah, it'll be on the right-hand side of that. You look at the catch basins, you're on the left-hand side of that, and then that'll be where the road is, and it's bending away from your lot.
It almost splits the two manholes.
Okay, so this, yes, I think that helps.
We can
Thank
mark
you
the
very much.
center line too up here if that helps you.
I think you've got the two catch basins.
Yeah.
And there is also a manhole behind I think next to the corridors,
Yeah,
right?
in the grass there, that's this one right here.
Okay.
Probably 20 feet off of that ground with easement edge.
I would say ballpark
30
about
feet
20
of
feet.
road.
Okay, great.
So this is the conversation that we're having, is actually adjacent to your property for the wilderness there. So in order to add, potentially when we look at other work to help add to that.
Great. My comment is that the animal never use the corridors. Just use my backyard. 4 legs or 2 legs.
So, well, do you like birds?
Yeah. Well, I do. I mean, my kids have fun seeing them, but yeah,
Yep.
they don't follow that path.
Well, don't feed them. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So first, so are these already submitted? When are these being,
Yep, all submitted.
okay, so we have 3 that are submitted now.
Is
The stormwater will just need to
Are
be
those
updated.
gonna be as they are submitted, or is that gonna be changed?
We can drill down to see if these are what the prospective buyers would be looking at for foundations. Dave, I can have that discussion offline, and then you'll be getting a new copy of this when we submit to Green International for the balance of K, and we can put those foundation changes on that plan. So yes, we
So-
would like to have this be it,
Okay.
so we're not coming back. But
Right.
we
So
might be able to-
anything staked now for any of these for the sidewalk?
We have septic systems staked.
Okay.
And we can certainly stake the roadway if the commission would like to walk this area. We're slated to be out there on Wednesday at this point.
What's the closest that the road is to the wetlands?
It's outside the 100.
Right.
So the 100 just nicks the corner of the right of way right here.
Okay.
So it's, again, it's septic systems,
Yeah.
the houses, and then associated yard grade. And again, out of the 3 lots, the 100-foot buffers right here, it's really just these 2 lots.
So you're saying?
They've got these already staked, so we can go anytime.
You have the septic, so
It is
you have the
septic, so we
boxes
can,
too.
yeah, we can ballpark those.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we gave, I forget if Chris asked for these. but we can certainly.
Certainly whatever's closest.
The septic's are the deepest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Obviously not here, but here it's equal, and that one's the deepest one.
I think this side is of more concern for me just because of the sheer water flow that comes kind of through this whole area.
When we get out there, you'll be able to get a feel for it.
Have you done any
Exactly.
borings at all, to make sure you're not contributing to the farm pond out of that?
So
area?
we've done soil testing on these 3 systems witnessed by Neshoba. So we understand, generally speaking, where groundwater is at. It is important to look, when you look at these 3 lots, to understand subcatchment areas, where this being a high point and a ridge line, there's very limited area on these lots that even go towards Turkey. They generally speaking, the yards are gonna go towards the wetland.
How close on this middle lot, sorry, another number, is that the grading to the wetlands line?
We're just off of the 50, pretty much everywhere. So essentially, we're setting our erosion control a foot or 2 off of the 50, and then we're establishing a yard swale, and then going up from there to the backyard.
So no grading within the 0 to 50?
This is one of the lots that was cleared this winter.
So some trees have been cleared. All the clearing was outside of the buffer zone, and it was part of kind of that subcatchment area that I was talking about. So basically following this ridge line towards Turkey, towards lot 13.
And then the next stop will be up here.
That would be phase 2, would be this section here.
What's the timing on that, do you think?
So, and why we're in on the 3 is we have 4 lots out there now. 11, 13 is sold, 15 is not, 22 is not, and then we'll get into the 5 lot in the cul-de-sac. So we have 5, 4, and 3. We kind of think that's gonna bring us out a year. And then
Okay.
quite honestly, we're worried about the market.
Okay.
That's why we broke this into 4 pieces,
Okay.
because we don't know when they're gonna shut the lights off on us, and we don't wanna get too much road open
Right.
and sit for 3 years and
Well, we appreciate you.
chase mud down the hill.
Now you have a sense of humor.
But that's the reality. is we
Well
just
practiced.
We don't wanna get out there too far,
You know,
you know?
okay, okay. So right now, in front of us, we're just looking
Yeah.
at this lollipop.
So, how about snow? Large amount of snow removal?
Snow storage.
Yeah, it's 3 lots, it's a roadway, the road shoulders are gonna hold snowbanks, just like every other road. The individual lots, it's driveway gets traveled off to the side, and all of those yards go into the road, which then go into stormwater management systems.
So the middle of the cul-de-sac, any plans for that?
It's landscaped per subdivision regs, so just low-lying ground cover. But,
The low point?
no,
It's not part of the drainage.
no,
correct?
it's not, yeah, it's not really shallow.
I've tried a couple of those as rain gardens, they don't function.
The salt. You could try and put a couple taller trees or something.
Have you guys gotten approval from Board of Health yet?
On these septic designs,
Yeah.
we don't have perks yet.
Okay.
We have to wait until the dry season, so we're anticipating
In
a couple months
progress.
on that. But we do have these designed to the degree that we feel comfortable with this grading scheme. Essentially, we know what groundwater is, we know what the soil texture is, and we made some very conservative assumptions on the perks.
Maybe plan for some pollinator attraction in the middle? Flowering,
I believe we
something
discussed that
flowering.
on this access corridor as well,
Yeah.
pollinators and berries.
Yeah, we're pretty open if you've got something in mind on that.
Service berry, low trees.
You wouldn't be opposed if we put trees out there though, right?
No, so you might even put something
Yeah, we'd like that.
there too,
We'd
because
like to-
it's also a place where people can sit or
Yeah.
Yeah.
just a little more shade there.
So you're allowed to put trees or shrubs in the cul-de-sac in the circle?
Small guy.
Yeah.
They're not be able to see.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get any kind of input the commission has on that, because we're.
That's a
going
good
to
point in
submit-
terms of your site. I think because the cul-de-sac's small, there's probably a service number of site trees might have to be.
There are, so there's a certain number that
Oh,
are
street trees, yeah.
that are
Yeah.
associated
Yeah.
with this.
But
Things
in an
the
actual
neighborhood
cul-de-sac?
aid.
Oh.
No, in the cul-de-sac it's not, it's specific to the linear footage of the road.
Okay.
That's how it's calculated.
Okay.
So yes, there will be street trees, and there'll be,
Right,
regular
yeah.
intervals around it, and then, this will be low-lying ground cover of some sort, so certainly pollinators and some
But we're not
bushes and
restricted to
areas.
low-lying ground cover.
No, that's what we're saying, if you wanted to
Yeah.
put another tree or something
Yeah, I
in
think we
there,
did
something
something
that.
up there.
Something following.
You really don't get, the grasses to grow in that area. So we'll have to
Takes
do
a
something
long
creative.
time.
The hell strip, you get
Mm.
baked.
Yeah.
Right.
exactly.
They do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
That's what it's called. That's actually it. I didn't make that up. Right, what about tree clearing, like 0 to 50? No plans to clear trees?
No.
So we're holding that 50 foot.
Just tell the Board of Health that. Okay, so I don't think that we have to have a scheduled site walk with the, if you give the liberty to the commissioners to just go out and see the three.
I would suggest after Wednesday, because our surveyors will actually have stakes in the ground.
Now, were you gonna state the house corners?
So I can say that. Yeah, I'll check what's out there right now, and we'll make sure we have house corners and get a general idea as well.
Okay. How's the pond?
Well, we gained on it, and now we're gonna get rain Wednesday. We had it pumped down, we just don't open it up with, I think that Wednesday's a nasty one.
When are you gonna put the crossover drain in?
Well, so we remobilized in February to do that stuff, and then March hit us pretty hard.
Right.
And
Yeah,
now we've
March
been
was-
pumping it. It takes about a week or so to pump that thing back down. We have it there, we're gonna get clobbered Wednesday, and it's gonna take another week to
A
pump it
couple
again.
weeks away.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
hopefully we can get a little stretch, it's not a big job, but we
No,
just need
that's-
we need a week to
Right,
pump,
right.
and then we need a week of no rain.
So it takes you
pending.
1 week to get that down.
Just depending on how much water gets in there, yeah,
And you're still pumping it to 4?
yeah. Pump it through the drainage system on the catch basin outside of, adjacent to the pond.
Have you tracked downgrading of that to make sure there's, every now and then, not any impact?
I haven't personally, but I can check to see
I
if they
think we should make sure that that's part of the.
Yeah, I
pump-
haven't been right at
the-
basin, I've looked
Part of
up
your
from the
pumping reports,
crossing.
I think if we could, during that period, do a pre and post, just to kind of, we gotta keep an eye on that we're not impacting somebody else.
And how's 2 functioning? Or maybe we're not supposed to talk about that part of Turkey, but it's not.
Oh, you
But,
can if it has any impact, I mean, all that water's gonna come down there.
2 or 3, 2's out by Grimes.
And
Yeah,
3
there's twos.
2 was just undercutting,
And
Yeah.
that'll help
Month
once
ago.
they address Grimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna happen until that's fixed.
What are they gonna do with Grimes?
That section of ground is being widened to 20 feet and repaved.
Due to this modification here, where we don't have to come out here, we don't have to go on Grimes, which stop and spruce on the widening, so it's really,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
There's been rumor that something, there was gonna be some parking area, additional parking area for the
There's a lot of
transit.
discussion. There's a lot of
Is there room?
discussion that's going on with respect to the farmhouse.
Yeah, I know.
and The realignment of grounds.
We sat in the hearing with, the town administrator was with MBTA
State rep.
and the reps and those guys to realign. We've given it the land if that's what they want to do. We've committed to relocating that farmhouse if that's what they want to do. We have land on the other side of the barn itself. And then they pick up, we did a conceptual plan for them at their request or at Keith's request, and they pick up 56 parking spots if they do realign it. But what we saw was, it's an act of Congress, to move that MBTA gang forward. This has been a discussion for 3 years at least. And,
Mass talk was fast
Whether or not
compared
they
to
really
the.
had the funding.
yeah, you distributed that,
Oh,
right?
yes, you do.
Yeah, well, that was across the street, they had $1.5 million committed, and then the MBTA finance guy said, well, we're not sure that's the case anymore, so.
It's an ongoing.
Yeah, it is all, but, I mean, there was a discussion of 20 people in the room, but I'm not sure it went anywhere. It was the Friday of Good Friday, so I think people came out to get out of the office. I say that politely, but.
Yeah, no.
Sure, I'll come to a meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going on to May 14th in hopes that commissioners have had an opportunity to go out. Amy can send out an email just to see if there's any feedback. When will you have Board of Health feedback?
When we submit to them, so we're not anticipating doing perk testing until probably June, July.
So we really don't have to go out till June or July then.
We're looking to have this permitted before that, if at all possible.
Isn't that kind of risky without having your Board of Health?
No,
If you recall, if you recall the way that Turner Turkey went together, it was the same situation.
Okay.
So we were chasing perk tests after notice of, or conditions.
Can you imagine Brian's liability if we build that road and he can't pick up things to Burke? Yeah, we've poked that thing, so he's comfortable.
I feel very
I'm comfortable in him.
Are we looking at just the fur lane?
No.
They're looking at
the entire
everything.
case.
Because of the modification from the road coming out here, now he's calculating the drainage again, and we will review all that. but-
Yeah.
And that must be a little ways out?
They're,
You still need to get them the revised?
yeah, we're issuing that this week. So in anticipation of, I think it's the 4th is the next planning board meeting, or the 3rd, to have the review done before then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Okay. So Amy, they're on for the next meeting then?
For May 15th.
Okay. And so for the commissioners that aren't here, we'll just ask them to go and, actually, Brian, do you have so this, not this one, the one, is that digitized to Amy? So that you can send that one to the commissioners who are going out on site?
It's in the stuff, or, yeah, why don't you send me a
Can you
separate
have-
PDF
and then
of
can
just
you
that?
leave?
Amy has this one, Amy has this one.
Can I take this one?
Absolutely.
And then Amy, when I'm done, I'll just leave it inside, commissioners.
Is this plot plan also available?
Pardon me?
Is this plot plan also available that we can actually look at?
This-
On the website.
Yep, it's on Littleton's
Can you
website.
sign in?
Oh, sorry, I didn't sign.
Yeah, if you put your email on there.
Okay.
Neatly.
Okay.
And I can send you the-
Neatly, yeah. Can't read it, email somebody else the plans.
Nothing happened. Oh, filing fees will be going up next time.
Going out or-
Oh.
Do we have anything? Any? Okay. Anything else?
The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, once you, or if you want to kick it back to me,
Oh,
yes, I
sorry.
know. It's a 7-hour workshop split into 2 nights on May 15th and May 22nd. Those are Tuesdays. I sent this around if anybody wants to look at it. I don't know if anybody would like to do that,
This one?
or
Preparedness
what?
workshop.
We'll get back to you on that.
yeah,
Thank
have
you.
to say, frankly, I'm stuck with the Acton one, so I'd really rather not do another one. But I could. I'm assuming nobody has any heart to do the bylaw.
No.
Really close. But yeah, no, I agree. It's
I delegated
yeah.
to,
Yeah.
What are possible violations on 9 Great Road next year?
9 Great Road is the one that Carl brought up. It's kind of behind 15 Great Road. I can't remember the name of the landscape person. They have a field back there, and they just constantly are moving things around and big root lodge or something going on back there. So I've not been on the property. Maybe I'll circle back with Carl. See how he feels about that. It's not, it would be, you know, woody debris and stuff like that. It's not pavement or anything like that, but it's landscape stuff. And then the one in Loxley, this actually isn't a very good pic. Did anybody get out there?
I did.
I think it's actually split between 2 lots, and that doesn't really do it justice, but there's some pretty big piles of,
I think a letter is warranted.
yeah.
Just, hey, you know, because one of them's the number 20 is the new construction, so it's like number 12, and then kind of like a little I don't even know if there's a stream in there, like a wetland area, maybe. a
There is,
drainage.
there's a culvert under
Okay.
that feeds
I
it.
thought
so
it was a
doesn't
culvert.
flow very well, but.
Yeah, and then, so like this basically probably vegetated wetland, and then number 20 is the new construction right at Christina and Loxley.
Yeah.
And so it looks like the new construction, there's like this, like almost berm of slash and landscape debris and leaves, and I mean, it's probably a good, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet high, in this like long berm, definitely within, like, I don't even know how they got it in there without knocking some of the trees down.
And it was hard to
seriously,
tell, some might
from
be in
my
the
angle,
wetland, it's definitely in the buffer zone.
It's
a-
absolutely
it's a
in the
mess.
buffer zone.
Yeah.
And
All right,
some
I'll
was
send him
also
some
on the
letters
other
to see if I can
side.
arrange a site walk.
I'm embarrassed it's on Loxley, I mean, that's like in my neighborhood.
Well,
And I didn't
I
get out
drive
there.
by it all the time,
I
and I
know,
never, I didn't notice it until someone, well, usually
You're
because
just
I'm
so
like
committed to being home.
rounding up kids when I'm driving
Yeah,
by.
they say
It's
actually
like
look
I
out the
drive
window.
home.
This is something.
Well, it's a drive home from Tiger's Den, so I'm like
Yeah.
fried.
Something was done with a leaf blower.
I don't know. I mean, some piece of equipment. It is uniform. It's like tall. Some piece of equipment did it. It wasn't just someone tossing
So you're
slash
just gonna make,
or
write
like
a letter?
wheelbarrows.
Yeah, since they got 2 owners, and see if I can get out there with them.
And I see you've got dates. What do you got?
I don't know, because we ended up with only one meeting in May because of holidays and town meeting and all that stuff. And I just think we're really swamped. K is gonna be spread out a little bit more
Yeah.
than maybe I initially thought. So I don't know if you wanted to set up a separate time or not, or wait and see how May 14th goes.
Is the,
Or, and we didn't get to do the regulations because we were stuck downstairs. So, I'm gonna try, if it's okay with you, putting that up front on May 14th again. Because I think the only piece left is the grandfathering, and if you would allow them as like 5% or 200 square feet or whatever.
Oh, right. Yep.
And that's weird, because that's like putting numbers on things, so that's always a little bit hard.
Okay.
So you think of that.
Do you want to start the meeting at like 7:20 that night, and we'll take care of it? And
I can do that too.
I'm not, I know it's hard for Jim, but I'm not opposed to starting earlier. You can watch the video while you're having dinner.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind starting it soon.
Well, we'd start 10 minutes early and take an extra 10 minutes past 7:30, and
Yeah,
I think that'll do pretty good. All right.
okay.
motion to.
do, just out of curiosity, what's the holiday in May?
Memorial
When do
Day.
they celebrate?
Memorial Day?
28th.
So May 21
Week
is
before that?
affected by the holiday.
Yeah.
I know I'm out of town then on the 21st. I'm turning 40 next month, and I've been told I'm not in town that weekend. Okay.
Oh, nice party for you.
Well, I guess you're being turned in.
Yeah, I know. Something.
That'll be interesting. That's right, none of us can make it on the 21st.
Yeah. No, my husband's not a party person. We're going somewhere.
Yeah, excellent.
Anyways,
So
I'm
we're
not
good.
available.
So it sounds like we'll just wait and see what the next one brings.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's wait and see.
Officially adjourn at 10 PM?
Do I hear a motion?
That was my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.